Today I'm going to be talking about the Tortilla Flat Chapter 2. I'm Bree Manchester. So just a quick summary of the chapter. We see Danny and Pylon go to observe Danny's two new houses. They walk into the first one, or they walk into the second one. We kind of skipped the first one. But you see them both decide this is the nicer, bigger house, and they decide to kind of live there. While Danny's out to get the water turned on, Pylon wanders into the backyard and he notices it's overgrown and the neighbor has chickens. So he makes holes in the fence for the chickens so that they can settle down and make nests in their backyard in the tall grass. He considers it a kindness for them. So then when Danny gets home, he tells Pylon to go get dinner. Pylon's a little mad, but he does it anyway. We see him going to kill a rooster he finds in the road, and he brings it home for dinner. And then over dinner, they discuss Danny renting the second house to Pylon, and that's what they end up deciding to do. So today, getting into the analysis, I want to talk about Pylon and hedonism. So throughout the chapter, you kind of see a couple different things Pylon does that reminds me, at least, of hedonism. So one of the first ones, he definitely is okay with taking Danny's pleasures and making them his own. Danny invited him, so he feels very comfortable doing that. And you see him say, 3 rooms, he said breathlessly, and a bed and a stove. We will be happy here, Danny. So he's like looking around the house and he's just assuming that, yeah, we will be happy living here. And he's very, very comfortable just accepting that Danny has invited him to live there. So he sees these things and he's taking it for himself. And then the book says, Danny moved cautiously into the house. Pylon darted ahead of him and into the kitchen. So despite Danny kind of looking around cautiously and having these memories of the former owner, Pylon is just ecstatic and he is enthusiastically moving throughout the house. So you can kind of see him very, very willing to just enjoy this pleasure that has fallen into his lap. He's not showing a whole lot of, need to repay Danny or any hesitation. He's just taking it. He's accepting it very comfortably. So then, moving forward, we can kind of see that he doesn't seek attachments to people, at least not in a negative way. So when he's asked to get dinner, it says, Pylon, remembering his brandy, thought this unfair. I am getting in debt to him, he thought bitterly. So he very much does not want to be in debt to anyone. He wants to be free. And he doesn't want Danny to have any control over him. And then it says, soon I shall be a slave because of this Jew's house. So in just being asked to get dinner, he feels very bitter about it, and he feels like he is lower than Danny, which he doesn't want. He wants the pleasures for himself. So he's very okay with not feeling like he should have to help Danny achieve his own pleasures. It's very focused on himself. And then he saw the elevation that came to a man who lived in his own house, and Pylon longed to feel that elevation. So despite the fact that he's getting this comfortable place to live with Danny, he still wants his own freedom and his own house and elevation. So he's not looking to be attached to Danny in any way. He very much wants these pleasures for himself. And then we see him using Danny's hospitality to his advantage. So it says, Pylon hated waste. This very thing has been bothering me. Why don't you rent the other house? He suggested. So he's seeing an opportunity of Danny having 2 houses, and he's jumping on it. He is convincing Danny to rent out the other house, essentially to him, because he wants that pleasure and that elevation for himself, and he's willing to take the things that he sees that will make him happy in the long run. And then it says, Pylon, except for his year in the army, has never possessed $15 in his life. But, he thought, it would be a month before the rent was due, and who could tell what might happen in a month? So he doesn't have the money that he has promised to Danny for rent on this second house, but he's not worrying about it. He's choosing to take the pleasure that has presented itself to him and to try to make his life better because he doesn't know what will happen in the future. So he's letting go of that He's letting go of worries for the future, and he's focusing on the pleasures that are coming to him right now, which I think resembles hedonism quite a bit. And then the last point, he's okay with taking from others for himself. We see in the book, it says, if there was one rule of conduct more strong than any other to Pylon, it was this: never under any circumstances bring feathers, head, or feet home, for without these a chicken cannot be identified. So he says this as he's killing this rooster he found in the road. And this, to me, very much says he knows that this chicken belongs to somebody, but it presented itself to him, and he's saying, this chicken's probably going to die anyway, so I'm going to kill it and take it home for my dinner because the opportunity has presented itself to me. And he's okay with taking that pleasure for himself, even though he knows it's not necessarily his pleasure to take. And then it continues with, that chicken, which Pylon had prophesied might live painfully, died peacefully, or at least quietly. So in this, I think you can kind of see, he is okay with taking that pleasure for himself, but also in terms of thinking about the chicken, he's saying this chicken will not have a pleasurable life. So in me killing it, that's bringing the chicken and myself more pleasure. So he's at least excusing his actions with thinking of the chicken, and this is bringing the chicken more pleasure than his life probably would have been. So even that shows kind of a hedonistic belief where this chicken's life ended better than it would have because of me. So I see a lot of hedonism in that. So then in terms of questions, I want to ask, how does Pylon's hedonistic attitude affect Danny? Because Danny definitely seems to take a very different approach to these things. Again, he was very cautious with the houses, and you hear him think a couple times, I wish it was, you with this responsibility. I wish I could just live with you. And so it's a very different attitude. And then how does Danny's attitude towards the house contrast Pylon's? So getting more into that, like what are the biggest differences there? And then how do you think Pylon's quest for pleasure will affect his relationship with Danny and the quality of their lives? Because again, they do contrast so much, and I think it will lead to problems. So what do you guys think? Thank you for listening.